What's up, guys and girls? In this video we're going to talk about Faye's full story. This is going to be similar to my other days of videos. The day Kratos and Faye met was about how the two came together from Kratos' perspective and hers. The day Kratos arrived in Midgard, which was Kratos' journey up to that point when he was forced to come to Midgard. And this will be Faye's complete story using only official canon releases from Sony Santa Monica. Before you begin though, please leave a like on this video. I really hate asking, but YouTube has recently changed again where getting likes is basically required to get your videos to get pushed out, so I really appreciate it if you just hit that like button. But let's get right into it. Our story begins 175 years ago. According to lore and legends, Brock and Sindri created Mjolnir and gave it to Odin. Odin then gave it to Thor, which Thor used to begin his mighty campaign against the giants. 5 years later, the giants asked Tyr to remove them from the Tyr's temple and to hide any passage to Jotunheim. 35 years later, when the assault began, Tyr managed to actually hide the realm. A few years later, in order to correct their wrongs, Brock and Sindri isolated themselves, working on a weapon to rival Mjolnir. After one whole year of non-stop working, they finally created the Leviathan axe and gave it to the giantess warrior known as Lufe. According to Corey, she told the giants that she would stay behind in Midgard and tell them when it's safe to come back. We can see that conversation on the Jotunheim mural when Faye told them that she'll stay behind in Midgard. During her time there, she will fight back against the Aesir, stopping them and foiling their plans. This was told by Mimir in God of War 2018.
About Faye the Just? Did you know her?
I never had the pleasure. Laufey was a rumour in the halls of Asgard. A giantess warrior who thwarted many an Aesir god's plans, freeing those who they would enslave, feeding those who they would starve, generally making a nuisance of herself in the most noble of ways. Thor was terribly frustrated he could never find her to fight. Once my imprisonment began, I could only wonder what became of her, and who she would turn out to be.
Eventually, she will become tired of fighting and wanted to stop. We know this because of an interview Cory Barlog did. According to lore and legends, this leads her to wandering the forest, where she will eventually encounter Kratos for the first time. As soon as they lock eyes, they clashed with one another, but the fighting stopped as soon as it began. Eventually, they became friends and had a son together. You can see all of this in lore and legends. Now, the next part of the video is going to be about her daily life now as a retired fighter and just being a mother. However, there's a lot of information that's scattered throughout God of War 2018's prequel comics and lore and legends, with a small bit from the God of War novel, but I will put it in order for you and talk about all the pieces of things that she did while being a mother, as I want this to be the definitive video for Faye's full story and lore. Faye's life seemed to be an easy one, living with her family after giving Kratos the Leviathan axe. She told Atreus stories about the world, made him a bow which he would eventually name the Talon Bow. She would cook and look after Atreus as Kratos would often leave, and we saw in the God of War 2018 prequel comics that moments when he would leave, he would come back and sometimes explain his day to Faye. But there are some odd things as well that is still very mysterious. It was shown in the God of War 2018 prequel comic that Faye also met a seer in the forest, a witch-like person. Faye also brought Atreus with her to go there a couple times. When Kratos met her in the prequel comics, she revealed she knew everything about him, even his past. She said that there will be a price to pay for the path he was currently on, and at the end of the comic, she died protecting Atreus. And she did say that this was the price that had to be paid, which was her own life. Now, in lore and legends, there's a moment in the book where Atreus said that there was a moment in time where Faye and Kratos would swap places. Kratos would stay at home and Faye will go out on these long journeys. And in the God of War 2018 prequel comic, we actually saw that. In the prequel comic, Faye was not around. In fact, it was just Kratos and Atreus, and these visitors found out about their home. So Kratos brought Atreus to this woman that Atreus mentioned, and the woman said that there was a price to be paid and she died protecting Atreus. So it turns out that lore and legends did say that she was gone for long periods of time. So where exactly was she? I'm going to come back to that in a little bit. So now we've reached the end of Faye's life. We jump back to lore and legends for the last entry on Faye. She was sitting around the fire, and Atreus noticed some very unusual things about her. Her skin was more pale, her eyes are more dark, and right now she's more quiet than she's ever been. She's weaker, and Atreus sees it. He tries to dive into her mind, and that's what snaps her out of this trance that she's in, but it was clear that this was actually going to affect her and probably lead to her death, as she's now appearing weaker and not very talkative. And now it's actually clear why in the prequel comics she wasn't around, and why lore and legend says that she wasn't around for a long time. She was marking the journey during the prequel comics, and now her end was coming. She tells Atreus one final story about the world. We learn in the God of War game and the book that she told Kratos to bring her ashes to the highest peak in all the realms and to chop down specific trees. This was the final goodbye from Faye to Kratos. Although both were warriors, they finally got a chance to be a family, but it's time to be a warrior again. Soon after she died, Kratos wrapped her body, but before cremating her, he chopped down the trees that she told him to. And finally, he reached the last tree, which is where you come in. Turn on your PS4 and your PS5, start up the game, and this is exactly where the game begins, as Kratos is cutting down that final tree. And this is the complete story of Faye. What I love about this story is the fact that these two were warriors. We all know Kratos' story, and Faye's story was spent fighting the gods for long periods of time, very similar to Kratos' story. So when they meet and they both have all this experience fighting gods, and for them to just stop fighting because they're both just tired of fighting, I think that's a really cool way to bring things full circle, from Faye's story and Kratos' story being very similar, coming together. I don't know, I think that's fucking awesome. Having this kid, and this kid, Atreus, is the product of both their struggles over the years against gods, right? If Kratos didn't struggle against the Greek gods, he wouldn't have been in that forest in that moment of time. If Faye didn't struggle against the Norse gods, she would not be in that forest at that period of time. And have their stories come together to create Atreus, who's just a product of both of their struggles, is fucking awesome if you truly think about it. I love this story. I love the story of Faye. Her death is kind of explained, kind of not, right? Giants don't die of old age. I made a separate video about that. I'll link it at the end, that maybe she's the daughter of the only other giant to die of old age, which was the king of the giants, which I'm going to follow up on in another video. I'm also going to make another video talking about the seer, the witch-like person that was in the forest, because she gave up her life for Atreus, knowing that it was coming, and she was friends with Faye. There must have been a reason. I'm going to talk more in depth about that in another video. But I appreciate you for watching this one. I'm going to be out of here. Thank you guys and girls for listening. Deuces.